In this module, we want to talk about the two primary types of options, calls and puts. And you'll often hear the terminology used that way, calls and puts versus call options and put options, but just know they're exactly the same thing. So you might remember in our very beginning intro to what an option is, there was this terminology that came from Investopedia. And it said options are contracts that grant the right but not the obligation to buy or sell, right? To buy or sell the underlying asset at a certain price at a certain date. So you may remember from that terminology discussion that a call option is that right to buy and the put option is the right to sell. So that is the primary difference. Call options grant you the right to buy at a locked-in price for a certain amount of time. And put options give you the right to sell at a locked-in price on or before a certain time. So in our example, we used the example when we were kind of introducing what an option was. We used the example of a call option on Apple. And there was this call option that gave us the right to buy the Apple stock, which was then selling for $135, the right to buy it at $140 up until July 16th, which was about 3 months later, for $5. That was the price or the premium that would have to be paid for that option. $5 times 100 shares is $500. But the key here is that it was the right to buy at 140, which makes it a call option. You may also remember from our option chain discussion that when we looked at the option chain, that they have both calls and puts, and you see that here and here, calls and puts. This again happens to be the Thinkorswim platform by TD Ameritrade. They're all laid out differently, but they're all going to have calls and puts. There's always an option chain. There's many options available at any given expiration date for all these different strikes. And so we pulled out the example of the 140. This is just on the previous slide. We said you could buy a 140 call option for $5. Right here. That's what we were talking about. Now, let's say I owned a bunch of Apple stock. Maybe I had 100 shares of Apple stock, and I was very concerned. I bought it at whatever price. Maybe I bought it at 110 or 100 or whatever, but it's gone up to 135. But I'm hearing rumblings, and the price hasn't really moved, and I'm concerned it's going to go down. Well, I have the ability to now come over here and buy a put option. Also, I could say a 130 put for $5, and this would give me the right to sell at 130 no matter what happens. So if Apple goes to 50 or 20 or 0, I have the ability to take that stock that I own and sell it for 130. So as long as I buy enough shares to cover the shares I own, so if I own 100 shares, I'd buy one contract for $500 at $5, it's $5 a share times 100. So for $500, I could protect my $13,000 in value. And so no matter what happens, if Apple went to 100, I still get to sell for 130. Now, what's interesting about put options is that you don't have to own the stock to buy the option. If you just think Apple's going to go down, you don't have to own any Apple stock. You just can still buy a put for $5. You can still buy that 130 put, or you could choose any strike price you want. You see the prices there. And what would happen is if Apple goes to 100, your put will gain a lot of value because you are holding the right to sell it at 130. So you could go to the market, buy it for 100, turn around and sell it for 130 because you own that right. And make $30 a share because the stock went down. So that's how you can gain value by not having to actually buy the stock, assuming it goes down. Now, you don't actually have to do that. You don't have to go buy the stock at 100 and turn around and sell it for 130. The value will be reflected in the option, and you actually see that here. Let's say, for example, 6 months ago, at some point in time, I don't know, Apple was up at 165, and at that time, the at the money option, or the money that, the something close to the current price, was $5. So you went and bought a put option when it was at 165, and now it's dropped to 135. So that 165 put option, you have the right to sell at 165, but the current price is 135. You can see there's a $30 price embedded already in that 165 option. That might sound a little confusing. Hopefully you get the idea though. The point is that the value of what that option will sell for on the market is reflected in there. And the same thing's true on the call option. You don't ever have to actually go out and get the shares and then turn around and sell them at that price. The value is reflected in the option because someone will pay for that right that you have, somebody that has that stock. It's a huge market, especially with Apple, very liquid, lots and lots, thousands and thousands of shares or thousands, millions of shares floating around out there on any given day. So you don't actually have to do those things, but the option will gain value. That's the key thing. If you owned a 130 at $5 and it dropped to 100, there's $30 of value there that will be reflected in the price of the option. We're going to stop there. Hopefully you get the difference between calls and put. Very simple. A call option is the right to buy. A put option is the right to sell. That's all it is. Call options gain value when the price of the underlying goes up. Why? Because you have a locked-in price to buy. Put options gain value when the underlying goes down because you have a right to sell at a locked-in price. So keep those things in mind. That's all the difference is. It's not too difficult, and we'll see you in the next module.